What happened to male desire? Not just sexual desire, I mean your desire for life. Have you ever caught yourself wondering why you don't feel like yourself anymore? Maybe you're getting things done still, or you're going to work, you're taking care of your family, you're checking all the boxes per se, but something feels off. This episode is brought to you by my HarperCollins published book, Mind Over Explicit Matter. Learn how artificial stimulation miswires your brain and what you can do to rewire it back to purpose, intimacy, and connection. Go to drtrishleigh.com/book. You know you feel different. You're not as excited as you used to be. You're not as motivated. Your focus, it isn't where it used to be or what it used to be. Intimacy doesn't feel the same. The things that used to light you up just don't seem to have the same kind of pull anymore. And if you've ever found yourself asking, what's wrong with me? I want you to hold on to that question for just a few minutes because I think we're about to replace it with a much better one. One of the biggest misconceptions about the brain is that people think that it only changes after something truly dramatic happens, a traumatic event, a major injury, or a life-changing diagnosis. But that's not how your brain works. Your brain changes every single day, quietly, gradually, one repetition at a time. Think about when you learned how to ride a bike. At first, it required all of your attention. Then one day, you weren't really thinking about it anymore. The same thing happened when you learned how to drive a car. Your brain took something that once felt difficult, but then it made it automatic. That's exactly what your brain was designed to do. It learns from whatever you repeatedly experience, whether that's a language that you're learning, or maybe you're building a new business, maybe you're trying to become an awesome husband, or you're reaching for your phone every time life becomes stressful or boring. Your brain doesn't judge the behavior, it learns the behavior. Every repetition strengthens a pathway. Every single repetition asks the same question: should I make this easier to do tomorrow? That's precisely where dopamine comes in. Most people think that dopamine is the pleasure chemical. It isn't. Dopamine is your brain's learning signal. Think of it kind of like a highlighter. It tells your brain, pay attention to this, remember this, come back here again. The more often that signal is repeated, the stronger the pathway becomes. Now think about the world that we're living in right now. Endless scrolling, infinite videos, constant notifications, artificial intelligence that's learning how to keep your attention, streaming platforms that automatically start the next episode before you've even decided whether you want to watch it or not. We live in a world where stimulation is available 24/7. That's 24 hours every single day. But I'm not here to tell you that technology is the enemy. That's not the conversation that I want us to have. The conversation that I want to have with you is, what is your brain learning from it? Because your brain is always learning. Every scroll, every click, every repeated behavior, every single choice that you make, it's all teaching your brain what you should pursue next. And eventually, those lessons begin shaping your desire. Not just your sexual desire, but your desire to work, to connect, to create, even to exercise or to be present with your family. Your desire on what you're going to pursue as your purpose. That's why I don't think the real question is, what's wrong with me? I think the better question is, has my desire become miswired? Those are two completely different conversations. If your desire is simply gone, that's one problem. But if your desire has been trained in the wrong direction, that's a completely different problem. And it's a problem with a very feasible solution. I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, and I want to welcome you to the very first Desire Rewire Friday Brief in the series of 6 briefs. For years, I've been measuring brain function with QEEG brain mapping and helping people from all around the world understand what is happening inside their brains. After looking at tens of thousands of brain maps, one thing has become incredibly clear to me. Most people do not need more discipline. They don't need more shame, that's for sure, and they don't even need more willpower. They need a better explanation. And here's why. Because once you understand what your brain has been learning, everything changes. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking the better question, what has my brain learned? What have I taught it to do? And what do I want to teach it next? That's exactly what we're going to explore together over the next 6 weeks. Every Friday, one important question, one brain lesson, one practical brain hack strategy you can use immediately. Because my goal isn't simply to help you understand your brain. It's to help you get your life back. So let's start where every rewiring journey begins. How does healthy desire become miswired in the first place? So let's answer that question. How does healthy desire become miswired? Most people think desire is something you're simply born with. They assume you either have it or you don't. You're either motivated or you're lazy. You're either attracted to your spouse or you're not. You're either driven or somehow you've lost your edge. But after looking at thousands of brain maps, I don't believe that's how desire works at all. Desire is learned. Your brain is constantly deciding what deserves your attention, your effort, and your energy. Every experience teaches it something. Every single repeated behavior strengthens a pathway. Every dopamine surge tells the brain, this matters, remember this, come back here. Over time, those repeated experiences become neural pathways. Those neural pathways become habits, and eventually, those habits begin shaping what your brain naturally wants. That's why I don't think the real question is, what's wrong with me? The better question is, what has my brain learned? Because if your brain has spent years learning to pursue quick, artificial rewards, it shouldn't surprise us when everyday life begins to feel less compelling. You know what starts to happen. Real conversations require patience. Real relationships require vulnerability. And real world accomplishments, they take time. But your brain has been practicing something very different. It's been learning that relief and gratification should be immediate. Stimulation should be constant. Novelty should always be available. And eventually, that becomes the standard your reward system begins expecting. But that doesn't mean you've lost your ability to enjoy real life. It means your brain has been practicing something else. When I first started seeing this in my online clinic, I wanted to know whether we could actually measure it. Was this simply something people were reporting, or was the brain itself changing in a way that we could see? So I studied it. In my research, which is being put forward towards publication, I was comparing men experiencing pornography-induced erectile dysfunction with men who were not struggling with pornography use. We found a consistent neurological pattern. Men experiencing PIED showed significantly elevated slow alpha brainwave activity in the frontal regions of the brain during resting state QEEG brain mapping. Now, let me translate that into plain English. What I saw wasn't a brain that had stopped working. We were seeing a brain that had adapted. Now that's a huge distinction because adaptation is exactly what healthy brains do. If you spend years practicing the piano, your brain adapts. If you spend years becoming an elite athlete, your brain adapts there too. But if you repeatedly expose your brain to intense artificial stimulation, unfortunately, your brain adapts in that direction. The brain is always asking one vital question: how can I become more efficient at what this person keeps asking me to do. In the case of pornography-induced erectile dysfunction, PIED, the brain begins relying on unusually high levels of artificial dopamine just to feel normal. Over time, natural rewards simply don't create the same response they once did. Motivation begins to drop. Intimacy becomes more difficult, if not impossible. Excitement for everyday life, it starts to fade. It's not because your desire disappeared. It is because your reward system recalibrated. This is what I call the drained brain pattern. Not because the brain lacks intelligence, quite the opposite. It's because the reward system has become exhausted from repeatedly adapting to unnaturally high levels of stimulation. Instead of responding powerfully to real life like you want to, it begins conserving energy and waiting for the next massive dopamine surge. When I look at brain maps with my clients, we can actually see it. This image isn't just a colorful picture of a brain, it's a snapshot of that learning. See these areas that are increased slow alpha activity indicated in red? They're showing us that the reward system has become what I call neurorigid. I use that word because I think it really clearly describes exactly what's happening. The brain becomes rigid in its preferences. It keeps returning to the same source of stimulation because that pathway has become incredibly efficient and rewarding. So think about it this way for a second. Think about hiking through a forest. The first time you walk through, you have to push the branches aside and you have to watch every step. But walk that same trail every day for months, and eventually you don't even have to think about it. The path becomes obvious. It becomes easy, automatic. Your brain works the exact same way. Every return to the same source of artificial stimulation strengthens that pathway. Every repetition lays another layer of neurological pavement until eventually the brain begins taking that route without much conscious thought at all. It becomes automatic. That, my friend, is the dopamine hijack. It doesn't happen because your brain is working against you. It actually happens because your brain has become exceptionally good at doing exactly what you've repeatedly trained it to do. And as strange as that might sound, I find that incredibly pragmatically hopeful, because if repetition built those pathways, then you guessed it, repetition can build the new ones, and that's where the whole story starts to change. Okay, so if that's how the brain becomes miswired, how does it become rewired? That's the million-dollar question. But this is where I think the conversation around recovery has gone wrong for a really long time. Most people believe the goal is to simply stop doing something. Maybe it's to stop scrolling, or to stop watching pornography, to stop reaching for your phone all the time, or chasing that stimulation. And don't get me wrong, stopping matters, but stopping isn't the finish line, because your brain doesn't like empty space. Your brain was designed to pursue. It was designed to move toward something. If you simply remove one source of stimulation without giving your brain something healthier to pursue, you guessed it, it will almost always go looking for another one. But I want you to know that's not weakness. That is neurobiology. The goal here isn't simply to stop pursuing. My goal for you is to teach your brain what's worth pursuing again. That's why I created what I call the Desire Rewire path. After years of studying brain change, I realized that almost everyone moves through the same 4 stages in this journey. First, your attention becomes hijacked. You don't even notice it happening in the moment. Little by little, your attention is captured by things that are louder, faster, newer, more exciting, more stimulating than real life. If that pattern continues long enough, your brain becomes miswired. Truly, this is the development of dysfunctional patterns, because now the reward system begins adapting. artificial rewards become easier to pursue than real ones. Motivation changes, intimacy changes, your focus, it falls off. The pull toward overstimulation grows stronger and stronger because the brain has literally learned to expect it. It creates dysfunction in the healthy brain performance patterns. But here's the beautiful part. The story doesn't have to end there. The brain is capable of becoming rewired. Through repeatedly healthy experiences, your reward system can begin to recalibrate. Then it can synergize that recalibration. The same neuroplasticity that built the unhealthy pathways can now build the healthier ones. When that happens, real conversations become rewarding again. Time with your family begins feeling so meaningful. You notice yourself laughing more. You feel more present. You start wanting things that actually move you forward in your life again. You're jazzed up. And eventually, those healthier pathways, they become so strong. They become so well practiced. They become well wired. Then they become hardwired for life. That's the destination. Not perfection and not ever struggling with anything ever again. Not becoming someone who never experiences temptation toward anything. The goal is something much more powerful than that. It's reaching a place where your brain naturally pulls you toward your life, the life that you actually want to live. It's the life where presence feels better than distraction, connection better than isolation, and purpose way more invigorating than escape. And then real intimacy becomes the highest physical reward in real life, far exceeding that artificial novelty and intensity that your brain was used to in the past. When the pull changes, everything changes. Now, one of the questions I get all the time is this: how do I actually speed up that process? And the answer is neuroplasticity. Remember, your brain is changing every single day, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Every experience is strengthening something. So the question becomes, can we intentionally accelerate healthier learning? And the answer is a resounding yes. That's exactly why I use neuromodulation technology. Think of it like a personal trainer for your brain. The technology doesn't put anything into your brain. It isn't controlling your thoughts. It's not forcing any type of change. It simply measures what your brain is doing in real time, and then it gives it immediate feedback so that it can regulate and change, modulate itself more efficiently. Just like a mirror helps improve a golf swing, or video replay helps elite athletes improve their performance. Just like my precious daughter Saoirse rewatches all of her horse competition videos so she can get better and better through the feedback by watching. Neuromodulation gives your brain information about itself. And your brain does what it has learned to do best. It learns. Every training session becomes another repetition, another opportunity to strengthen healthier pathways, another vote for the person that you are becoming. And one of my favorite parts is this work that I do and I help people do. We don't have to rely on hope alone. Of course, it's important, but we can actually measure progress. This graph that you can see right now represents something much more important than numbers. It represents a brain changing. Week after week, we can watch unhealthy patterns begin settling down. We can watch that slow alpha activity move toward a healthier baseline. We can literally see the reward system becoming more flexible and more responsive to your real life again. But what's even more exciting is what starts happening outside of the brain map in neuromodulation. People tell me all the time, I actually wanted to go for a walk. I looked forward to dinner with my family. I sat outside with a cup of coffee and I didn't even think about grabbing my phone. Date night felt exciting again. I enjoyed reading a book. I felt present during a conversation. Those moments may sound ordinary, but they are not. They're extraordinary because they tell us something profound. The pull is changing. The brain is beginning to prefer real life again. That is what rewiring really looks like. It's usually not dramatic. It can be quiet. It's gradual. It's thousands of tiny decisions teaching your brain a new way to live. And over time, those tiny decisions, they become a completely different life. So how do those new pathways actually become permanent? I want you to picture yourself standing at the edge of a beautiful grassy field. The very first time you walk across it, you barely leave a mark. Tomorrow, you walk the same direction again, and it's a little easier this time. Then you do it the next day and the next. And after a few weeks, you begin to see a faint trail. But after 6 months, there's an obvious path worn into the grass. Eventually it becomes the easiest route to take, and you don't even think about it anymore. That's exactly how your brain works. That's why training your brain can be so powerful. Every repeated thought, every repeated action, every repeated experience, it leaves a footprint, not just in your memory, but in the physical wiring of your brain. Some pathways lead you toward the life that you want. Other pathways are quietly pulling you away from that life. And here's what most people never ever realize. Your brain doesn't strengthen the path that you intend to take. It strengthens the path you actually walk. That's why I use the word miswired. Not broken or damaged, and certainly not hopeless. Miswired. Because wiring isn't permanent. Wiring changes. That's what neuroplasticity really means. Not that change is possible someday. It means change is happening right now. The only question is, in which direction? So I want to leave you with a simple brain hack strategy this week. Tonight, before you go to bed, take out your pleather journal, remember the one that you've gotten so you can document this Desire Rewire. Draw 2 paths. One path represents the life you've been practicing. The other path represents the life you want to create. Now think back across your day. Don't judge yourself and don't make excuses. Simply notice. Where does each decision, each thought, each action that you took today, where does it belong? Which path? The workout, the extra hour of scrolling, the difficult conversation you avoided, the hug you gave your spouse, the explicit content, the cold shower, the argument, the walk outside, the candy bar, the healthy meal, the time you spent with your children or not. Every single action belongs on one path or the other. Then, when you have them all written down, ask yourself this one simple question. Which path did I strengthen today? Tomorrow, don't try to become a completely different person. Simply place one more action on the healthier pathway. Just one, because that's how brains change. Not through one emotional moment, not through one motivational video, and definitely not through making promises you will never keep to yourself. Brains change through repetition, through one healthier choice at a time, repeated often enough until it becomes the easier choice. And eventually it becomes the natural choice. It becomes automatic. That's what we're building together. Not perfect people, but healthier brains. Because when the wiring changes, the pull changes. And when the pull changes, everything else starts becoming easier. Okay, so if today's conversation resonated with you, don't stop here. If you've been wondering whether your own brain has become miswired, don't guess. Measure it. You can spend time with me. Visit drtrishleigh.com and begin learning where you are on the Desire Rewire path. And if you're ready to understand your brain at a much deeper level, a brain map assessment allows us together to see exactly how your brain is functioning. We can identify the patterns that might be holding you back, and we can build a personalized plan that helps you move forward. Because the goal isn't simply to stop unwanted behaviors. The goal is to rebuild a brain that naturally wants a healthier, more fulfilling life. Next Friday, we're going to answer the next question in this journey. How does healthy desire become hijacked in the first place? Because once you understand how the hijack happens, you stop blaming yourself and instead you start protecting your brain. So until then, I want to leave you with one thought. Your brain is always learning, but the question is, what are you teaching it? Because your brain learned this, what you are caught up in right now, but your brain can learn something better, what you really want for your life. And when healthier patterns become your default, you won't simply become rewired. You'll become hardwired for life. I'll see you next Friday.